Horror movies are great because they can explore many themes and tell stories that are both relevant and timely, while also reflecting the anxieties and fears that we as a society are currently experiencing. Also, fun rubbery monsters. One theme that has been in many horror movies is environmental themes. The fear of not just nature, but also losing nature or even nature striking back is a big one. As the climate crisis is ramping up and we are currently going through a man-made sixth major extinction, ecological grief is rampant. In fact, a study done with 10,000 young people across the world has shown that 59% were very or extremely worried about the situation. The kids ain't alright, which makes sense because the world is currently on fire. Today we're going to go over a movie that is dear to our hearts and chock full of environmental themes. A little 70s creature feature by the name of Prophecy, and ooh-wee is it a fun one. Prophecy is directed by John Frankenheimer, who did The Manchurian Candidate, and written by David Seltzer, who wrote The Omen. And it's set in 1979, and it tells the story of Dr. Robert Verne, played by Robert Foxworth, and his wife Maggie, played by Talia Shire, who traveled to Maine to investigate environmental issues caused by a paper mill, where they discover a mutant creature terrorizing the local area. But first we gotta set the scene of this movie. The 70s was a pretty turbulent time, and one of the growing movements was the environmental movement. For example, Earth Day was started in 1970 in the wake of some major environmental tragedies such as the Santa Barbara oil spill in 1969, and 20 million people took to the streets across the United States to protest environmental destruction. Also during the 70s were many civil rights movements, one of which being AIM, which had land back and Indigenous sovereignty as a message. The filmmakers of this time were living through this, and because all art is inherently political, these themes begin to be found in the movies they made, even horror movies, which brings us back to Prophecy. The film opens with a search and rescue team looking for lost lumberjacks who get brutally killed by some large beast deep in the woods. Hell of a way to start a movie. We are then greeted to Dr. Robert Verne, who gets hired by his friend from the EPA to write a report about the ongoing dispute up in Maine between big logging and a fictional Native American tribe who call the Androscoggin River home. The paper mill's pollution, specifically the contamination of water with mercury, is central to the film's horror. The mercury from the paper mill is poisoning the river and everyone who uses it. This results in the main threat, an all-around sweetheart, Katahdin. Katahdin is the giant mutated bear who is rightfully pissed off about what is happening in these woods, and is the physical manifestation of the pollution and evil caused by the paper mill. The beleaguered Native American tribe have called this killer bear Katahdin a vengeful spirit in their spiritual worldview.
Katahdin. That's one of their legends. They call it Katahdin. Yeah, it's sort of a Bigfoot, I guess, only it's uglier. Yeah, it's larger than a dragon and got the eyes of a cat. Yeah, they've thrown in everything but the kitchen sink.
Now one could argue that Katahdin is not the bad guy of this movie, but a victim. The real bad guy is Mercury. Oh, and capitalism. Oh, and colonialism. And racism. Also white people. However, we'll go back to Mercury. Mercury is a heavy metal and considered one of the unfantastic four that is a major risk to humans, along with cadmium, lead, and arsenic. In humans, mercury can be dangerous to newborns as it can mess up the nervous system. In adults, too much mercury can cause tremors, extreme mood swings, insomnia, and much more. Mercury does have severe impacts on aquatic ecosystems, such as rivers, where it can do two things: bioaccumulate and bioconcentrate. Bioaccumulation is the buildup of a pollutant within the body of an organism over time. Bioconcentration is how mercury concentrations increase going up the food chain, becoming higher level in predators such as birds, fish, and bears. Even low concentrations of mercury in water can contaminate an entire food chain and make fish unsafe for consumption. All this mercury runoff from the paper mill wreaks havoc on the environment. When Dr. Verne begins to explore the area, he sees a salmon big enough to eat a duck, raccoons that are insanely aggressive, tadpoles the size of shoeboxes. These creatures are byproducts of the area being polluted by agribusiness. They are becoming larger and more aggressive. Katahdin is a mutated and pained beast who does not understand what is happening to her. This is what capitalism has wrought. Mutant bears hell-bent on murder. Nature, while strong and frightening, can be fragile, and the tampering of man can throw it completely off balance. Prophecy has another aspect to the film that makes it interesting outside of the environmental messaging, and that's highlighting the struggles of Native Americans and their sovereignty, as this film was released during the Red Power movement. It follows the plight of the fictionalized Mecury Indigenous tribe, who are given the nickname Opis, which is short for Original People. Here we have one of the other main characters, John Hawkes, played with the grace and care only an Italian could do, Armando Sante. Hawkes wants Dr. Verne to include their voices in his report, as they believe the paper mill is not being truthful about what they are doing. This may come to a surprise, but he's 100% right. Having the plight the natives are going through is a major part of the story. Native Americans fighting for our sovereignty and our right to live free and happy lives has been a struggle since 1492. What is happening to the Opis is extremely familiar, as it is still going on today. Centuries we have been fighting for the basic rights of housing, food, and water. Even in the year of White Lord 2024, many Native American nations do not have running water, including my own, the Dene, in the Southwest in the Americas. I'll be real with you, I think fighting a giant monster bear is better than fighting colonialism. Now, one theme a lot of these ecological horror films have is one of nature striking back because of the sins of humanity. For example, man in this movie does the huge sin of destroying the environment and creating Katahdin, who then goes on a rampage, killing those in charge. In Jaws, the humans do capitalism too well. As we all know, sharks don't like that, and the shark goes on a rampage. In Godzilla, humans have run amok with nuclear power and are flirting with disaster, which causes Godzilla to come stomp them back into the Stone Age for their hubris. I mean, there are even real-world examples of nature fighting back that people love. There's the Champawat tiger that stalked and killed around 400 people until she was brought down in 1907. Recently, there was that elephant that killed someone and then traveled 100 miles to that person's funeral just to crush their body, which, I'm not gonna lie, really fun. These stories never get old, as they invoke the most primal fears that we humans have. That may be because we used to be hunted by these animals. We were not once on top of the food chain, and we had to work our way up. So deep in our DNA, there may be that fear that something bigger is going to come after us and eat us and attack us, which is why, again, these movies are so popular. It's easy to see why these themes of nature fighting back and the grief and loss of nature are resonating in our current climate. Our world is getting decimated by wildfires, floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, and many other major disasters that it's not that far off to think that the earth is extremely pissed with us. Which, to be honest, she has every right to be. We have been causing irreparable harm for the last century. The resource extraction, which is a function of capitalism, has been out of control. Wealthy countries have been emitting the most carbon emissions, which cause destructive weather patterns, with the greatest impact to water quality in the poorest parts of the world. It doesn't stop until we dismantle the fossil fuel industry and move away from these extractive practices. Resource extraction by the fossil fuel industry has put our planet in this predicament. It's easy to see why this fear is becoming so prevalent among people. Our planet is slowly dying, and us normal folk can't do anything but watch it happen. The reason being, the people in charge who make the decisions are the ones destroying it. If anything, it's like watching a giant mutated bear eat your loved one as you sit by and watch.
Undeniable.